Welcome once again to another edition of Chef Knives to Go Quick Look Product Reviews. I'm Steve Gamache, and today we are looking at the Kohetsu Wa, or Japanese handled blue number 2 Nashiji Sujihiki 270mm knife. So that's quite a mouthful. So the blue number 2 refers to the core steel, which is Aogami or blue paper number 2 Hitachi reactive carbon steel. The Nashiji refers to the finish, which Nashiji is supposed to mean like a pear skin mottled finish. I wouldn't put this a classic Nashiji, but it does have some textured and hammering to it. And of course, it's a Sujihiki or slicer type knife. The heat treat on the core steel is about 62 Rockwell, and the construction on this knife is a stainless steel cladding over the top of that blue number 2 core for a 3-layer sandwich. The weight on the knife, and these are going to vary a little bit from knife to knife, all these dimensions and weights, because they are handmade, but the weight on this particular knife is 162 grams or 5.7 ounces. The blade length on this one's about 273 millimeters on the edge, or about 10 3/4 inches, and the overall length was about 16.5 inches. The thickness of the spine coming out of the handle above the back of the heel here was about 3.3 millimeters, and it thinned out pretty quickly in the next inch or so, and then holds about 2.5 millimeter, maybe down to 2-ish as you get towards the tip, and then not a lot of distal taper, but then it thins out, and there's kind of an interesting, almost a sword style grind here they've got on the tip. Is pretty cool, but it thins out, of course, at the very tip with the grind. Blade height on this one's about 35.7 millimeters. Handle is a no frills, oval, ambidextrous, some call it chestnut. I'm not exactly sure the wood, but it's not dyed like some of the handles are, so it looks to be solid throughout, so there's no dye to come off. And a plastic ferrule. A little bit of a step between the wood and the ferrule, but the wood has actually a nice texture to it. This one's actually sanded a little bit more smoothly than some handles, but it's got a neat look to it and some texture. I think it actually feels pretty good in the hand. 3-inch circumference here, so it's not a super skinny handle, and that kind of, you have to watch your clearance if you're going to do board work with it, but it's a little bit bigger handle than you'll see on some Sujis, but anyway, that's the style that you have on there. The balance point on this is right about there where these back kanji are, and so if you're going to pinch this, it's just slightly in front of that, so you get a little bit of a weight forward feel to the blade. Let's take a close-up look at it. It's a fairly stiff blade also. Before we do that, it's pretty stiff in the back half because of the thickness of the spine, and then it gets a little more flexible towards the tip. So again, stiffer in the back half of the blade, a little bit less flex, a little bit less rigidity, and a little bit more flex towards the front of the blade. Here is the up-close look at it. So you've got some hand chiseled kanji. There's your textured finish with some hammer marks on it. So it's got a little bit of a rustic feel to it. This particular one, the spine is finished a little more cleanly and polished than on the 240 Gyuto I just reviewed. But it's a little hard to tell here, but as you look at it in the light, you can actually see the 3-layer sandwich composed of the cladding and the core steel. And that is a classic sanmai type of construction. Waterkomi is where they put the cladding over the top of the knife so you don't see that construction so you don't see that construction coming through at the spine. You do have to be aware of that core steel exposed at the spine and keep it dry. Don't let it sit wet. Even though the cladding is stainless, you can get some corrosion right there, so just keep it dry, and just take care of it like you normally would. You can see the core steel exposed at the edge here. These also have a gunmetal, kind of a gray matte finish to them. And my experience is that does contribute a bit to sticking and friction in the cut. This would be easy to smooth out that blade road a little bit with some abrasive of your choice and finish it off and polish it up a little bit. Will probably reduce the friction a fair amount during the cuts. And if you're doing a lot of slicing, reduced friction is good. So you could improve the performance of this knife with just a little bit of elbow grease if you wanted to do that on the blade road. I'd recommend it if you're up for the challenge. Fit and finish is really pretty good. Got some just enough rounded touches on the back of the knife, the choil, and the spine. It's very comfortable. Out of the box edge, I'll give it about a 5 out of 10. It's kind of your typical, fairly quickly done out of the box edge. But I sharpened the 240 Gyuto, and the steel is awesome. It takes a great edge, easy to sharpen, gets screaming sharp. No problem there. So it's a nice looking kind of rustic type knife at a good price point. Let's put it on the cutting board just so you can see what it looks like. Obviously, you're not going to be doing a lot of board work in the classic sense. You'll be doing more of the draw cuts, slicing things, but here's your profile. One thing that's cool is the way they ground. They ground the knife down pretty much just straight across here, and so you got this cool pointed tip on it. And here's your profile on the blade. Again, you got a little bit of belly towards the tip, which is kind of nice when you're doing slice draws. You can kind of bring the heel up. You have to bring the heel up a little bit if you want to get all the way to the tip. So it's not a real low tip. So it does mean you got to bring the heel up if you're going to run the tip through an ingredient if you're doing draw slices, just FYI. But each blade will be just slightly different in that manner. So here's an interesting stainless clad carbon cord Suji model for you to consider. This is the Kohetsu Wa, or Japanese handled Aogami No. 2 Nashiji Sujihiki 270mm knife.